We'll call this meeting back to order. Welcome you all here this evening. And we'll begin the evening with a moment of silence where you can pray to yourself. Just enjoy the moment of silence, meditate on whatever you want to do. So you'll join me in that. Thank you. If you all join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about that. We'll move on to public comment. We've got one person signed up. Mr. Brandon Olson. If you'll just say your name, your address for the record. And then the clerk's ready, we'll begin our 3 minutes.
I will take 3 minutes. Brandon Olson, 33 Stony Brook Court. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Sheila, out there feeling better soon. Just wanted to come forward tonight and let everybody know Fletcher Youth Baseball and Softball launched our website last week. Registrations opened last week. We got 80 or so as of this morning. But we are looking for coaches and umpires to volunteer and for sponsors. I've reached out to a few local businesses. I'll be reaching out to Papa. If anybody has anybody in mind, Greg, let me ask you for your contact with Optimum. It sounds like, but we've got that going on. You know, it's only just started in December, but we're looking forward to spring and get to the 2023 season.
Is there an age limit on the umpires you're looking for?
I don't think so. We've had, I know last year was pretty broad.
My son did it when he was in high school.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Have like the teenagers do the t-ball games. And
I
stuff
can
like
find
that.
out if there's any limitations on that for you. But you can come out and help Keith.
Absolutely.
Hope you'll think about it. Thank you.
There you go. Sounds like you might have got yourself on fire. Does anybody else that would like to speak during public comment? Okay. We'll move on to item number 1 on our agenda, the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll move.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. We have a second.
Second.
Our motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We're on item number 2, updates from council if there are any. Okay, no updates from council. Moving on to item number 3, the consent agenda. Any questions, comments, concerns related to the one item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Remove.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, we're on to the selection of the applicant to fill the current at-large vacancy on the planning and zoning board. Council, you all have a ballot. All you have to do is write the name of your preferred candidate on the ballot. You'll pass your ballot down to me. If we have a majority for one individual, I'll ask for a motion to approve that individual. However, we have a discussion before you all write down your preferred candidate.
I like to say I was here last meeting. I did review the applications, and I personally thank Brandon Olson for putting the video out. So I got to go back and watch that video, so thank you for that, of all the interviews. So that helped me out tremendously.
Okay. We're having a discussion.
Do we need to put our names on these, or?
I don't think you need to put your name on. Ms. Grumman and 2 votes for Ms. Mondin. With that being said, my preferred candidate is Ms. Grumman. So I'll take a motion to appoint Ms. Grumman to the at-large position on the planning board.
Make a motion.
We have a motion to appoint Ms. Grumman. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving her, say aye. Those opposed? The motion carries.
Just for anybody that's in the audience, when the council takes a vote like this, typically the mayor doesn't vote unless it's a tie and then he breaks the vote.
What else
Who
we
is
need?
this person, who is this person you just appointed?
This is the moment for public comment.
I
However,
just want to know who it is.
it's Olga Grumman. Do we have any other discussion on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5. And congratulations. Thank you. And thank you all for applying. We have such wonderful candidates. Moving on to item number 5, the presentation of revised traffic analysis for the Town Center project. We have Mr. James Boso here for our presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, county members and staff for having me here this evening. I'll be as thorough or as brief as you would like. I know that this has been going on for some time. I'm with Matter and Craig, for those that don't know. We're an engineering firm located in Asheville. I'm a resident of Fletcher. I've been here for over 20 years. I'm a traffic engineer by trade. We've been working, assisting the city, with the town with the traffic analysis for the Heart of Fletcher development for some time. Been a lot of meetings with the developer, the town, NCDOT. It's been a process, but I think we're making headway. I know that Mark has met with you and spoken with you in the past and given some information and updates. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to talk with you about this, so I don't want to talk about old history necessarily.
And just for, James, for your benefit and councils and the public, I brought them up to speed with the last iteration of the potential connection of Old King Creek Road to Howard Gap.
Okay.
And the impact that it has. So maybe if you can give a little more background of kind of the why that it got to
Where we are?
Yeah, where we are right now.
Sure thing, I'd love to. So, we Matter and Craig worked on a TIA for the Heart of Fletcher development back in July of 2022, and submitted that TIA to NCDOT to get their review and comment. Around September of 2022, we got some information back from NCDOT on the findings of that study. They agreed with some things, they disagreed with some things, they had some questions about some things. We had several meetings with NCDOT to discuss some of their concerns and questions. The general premise is that it's no secret to anybody that there's a lot of traffic on 25 right now. And there's a lot of traffic at the intersection of Fanning Ridge Road and Howard Gap Road. And unfortunately, at certain times of the day, those intersections are currently at or over capacity. It's a problem for a short period of time during those peak periods when people are heading off in the morning to work or coming home in the evening from work. I'm sure you've all experienced it and seen some of the delays and queues of traffic and so forth. Unfortunately, it doesn't last for a really long time, but there are periods of the day where those intersections are struggling. And NCDOT recognizes this, and I think the challenge has been trying to identify appropriate mitigation that may be necessary if the part of Fletcher development were to develop as it has been proposed and the additional traffic that it would generate, and not overburden that development necessarily with correcting the existing problems that are already there. And so it ultimately needs to be a kind of a partnership between all of the parties, including NCDOT, because they recognize there's a problem there, and they recognize there's some responsibility for addressing that problem, but they also recognize that a development of that magnitude would increase some more traffic in the area, would change traffic flow patterns, and so they want us to properly identify what we think that traffic would be, what those flow patterns would be like, and what ultimately the responsibility of this development would be to mitigate that traffic. So, as I said, we met with them, we heard their concerns. I've come back to the table and done some more analyses, looked at some more things that they asked us to look at. And I can give you a brief summary of where our study stands right now. Ultimately, I think we're getting closer to a solution and to an agreement amongst the parties, but we're not there yet. I think we still need to talk with DOT some more and explain to them some of the findings that we have now with the additional analyses and studies that we've done, and continue that dialogue with them, because it's going to have to be a collaboration. So initially, we studied an area larger than just right here in front of us. We looked at several intersections up and down US 25 and some of the intersections off of the side streets, because that was the process that we have to go through with NCDOT when we do a TIAs. We identify a study area, and they have to agree to what they think the study area is going to be and what intersections and streets it's going to involve and so forth. We basically narrowed it down to the intersection of Fanning Bridge Road, the intersection of Howard Gap Road, and whatever happens in between those two intersections is primarily what NCDOT is concerned about. Outside of that, they've agreed that we don't need to make mitigation improvements, or that they don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. As you come down like East Fanning Bridge Road and get close to this building right here, these are not DOT streets, so they're not overly concerned about what happens here. So they're focused on Fanning Bridge to Howard Gap Road. We looked at what would be necessary at those intersections to basically maintain the level of service and delays that are currently happening at those two intersections. With this development, we don't want to make it any worse. We don't necessarily want to solve the problems, but we don't want to make it any worse than it currently is. The real need right now at the Howard Gap Road intersection is a southbound dual left turn lane. The lefts that, left turning traffic in the evening trying to get to Howard Gap Road is very heavy. It backs up. We're competing for space between those two intersections. And this study identifies that, but unfortunately, that may not be a practical solution. It's, what is the feasibility of being able to construct dual left turn lanes? Because then Howard Gap Road has to be able to receive dual left turn lanes, and you have to carry that traffic a certain distance before it tapers back down into one lane. So you end up with some fairly extensive improvements that are needed at that intersection. With the extension of the Cane Creek Road extension, we can help that situation. We don't necessarily alleviate the problem. The Cane Creek Road extension would help tremendously in the morning, because people would be able to come up and make a right turn on the extension and not have to come up to Howard Gap Road and make the right turn to get onto US 25. That's your heavy movement in the morning. Some of the traffic in the evening would use that same route to go to to go back down Howard Gap Road. But the problem in the evening is that if we did this extension, built that intersection, it would be within 300 feet of the existing intersection with Howard Gap Road. And so when that traffic backs up from Howard Gap Road because of the traffic signal, that traffic is going to back up to and past this new intersection that we would be creating. And so unfortunately, people that want to come and make that left turn and get on the Howard Gap Road can't because they're blocked by a queue of traffic that's there. So that extension isn't as effective in the evening as it is in the morning. What it does, though, is it helps improve conditions in the morning. It's still, the intersection is still at or over capacity, but the amount of delay that would be occurring at the intersection would be less than what's occurring now. In the evening, we don't improve the intersection, we degrade it a little bit, but it still is at what I would say are acceptable levels of operation, D and E, or you're right at capacity. I think that the Cane Creek Road extension is worth looking at further and considering, because I do think it has benefits to not only to this development but the area as a whole. I think that the solution is going to be potentially that in concert with some improvements at the Howard Gap Road intersection. Also at the Fanning Bridge Road intersection, what we're recommending right now is eastbound, if you're on Fanning Bridge Road, eastbound, a right turn lane to get onto 25. Westbound, we're talking about making dual left turns, because most of that's not needed today, but with this site, most of the traffic that's exiting this site and wants to go left onto 25 would use that movement. So we're recommending dual left turn lanes there, and I think we have the width there, and you have the receiving lanes on 25, so that one seems like a pretty viable mitigation improvement. And then also a right turn lane on 25 into the site, or East Fanning Bridge Road, kind of in the area of the clock tower right now. Those are the things that we've identified as potential mitigation to alleviate the traffic concerns that would be generated by this development.
Is there room to put a right turn lane there?
I'm sorry?
Is there room to put a right turn lane there, or would you have to tear down the clock tower?
I don't know the answer to that, to be quite honest. I would defer that to probably the civil engineer that is assisting. I think there's room, but without knowing exactly what's underground and knowing where utilities are and things of that nature, I don't want to say anything that's incorrect. So off the cuff, it looks like there would be room, but I can't commit to that.
Before I forget, Will Bowie was going to try and be here tonight to offer some comments, answer any questions from the developer perspective. He was working with our developer rep, and he couldn't be here, he was sick, so I don't have his comments to interact with you on that.
And what is the big issue with the dual turn lane going south on 25 onto Howard Gap?
Just the ability to construct it and the cost associated with that, because it would require widening Howard Gap Road across the railroad tracks and then a certain distance down Howard Gap Road in order to effectively take 2 lanes of traffic, allow them to make a left turn. Now they're on Howard Gap Road. Now those 2 lanes have to take her back into 1 lane. You don't want to push the problem just a few hundred feet down the road and then it starts. So you got to continue to widen Howard Gap Road for a significant distance to allow that traffic to then take her back in. So it's not necessarily a problem, it's just, it's costly. And is it a cost that the development could carry?
Well, it just seems to me that area's already a mess right now, that if we don't do it now, we're gonna have to do it in the near future.
I agree. But, and I think that that's where continued discussions with NCDOT are necessary to determine see if there's some cost sharing possible for something like that too. So it's not just one entity's burden.
In the old Cane Creek extension you're talking of, were you envisioning that coming out about where it comes out now?
Yes.
And would that be a stoplight or just?
It wouldn't be a stoplight, it would be too close to the existing traffic light. Ideally, if the further you can move it away from the intersection of Howard Gap Road, the better it's gonna function. So, you know, if in a perfect world, you would move it 1,000 feet away. I just don't think you can do that with the property that's there and the property you own and don't own.
Yeah, I mean, we have our public works there, and short of tearing that completely down, which would be very expensive for us,
Right.
you don't have a whole lot of choice. On these future traffic volume charts and stuff that you guys put together, on all these maps, you show a site drive 3 and a site drive 4. Why do you show 2 when there's only one plan?
Well, that's based on the site plan that was developed for the Heart of Fletcher development. And
But the site plan only showed one road in the middle going on to 25, not 2.
well, it actually does have an access point number 4, which is, it doesn't show up as a site drive number 3 is basically Depot Street.
Right.
And there is an access shown to the left of that serves that parking lot in track 1.
Well, I don't see
And
that.
that one is probably going to be, we recommended that be a right-in, right-out driveway.
Yeah, you cut that.
That one is this one.
Oh, I see. It's in the gas station. I got you. Okay. I just spent a lot of time yesterday trying to analyze this study, and I found it very, very difficult. Just to understand all these numbers and.
It is confusing, I agree. And it's, I'm trying not to make it confusing, but, you know, I'm trying not to talk about level of service and delays and all that, which is what is on these charts. And that's ultimately what NCDOT holds us accountable for. That's what they look at, and that's what they charge us with saying, you know, the intersection is currently operating at this level of service with this delay. When your development comes in and you distribute your traffic here, there, and everywhere, we don't want you to change the level of service or the delay that was happening at that intersection. And so in order to do that, when you start adding traffic and when you start moving traffic around and having it operate in different ways than it's currently operating, and you put all that information into the model, it sometimes changes level of service and delays and so forth. So then you have to try to find ways to mitigate that, to get back to where we were, the starting ground. And that's where these turn lanes and so forth come. Is, you know, we're looking at different things to try to mitigate any of those changes. And I will say, we've also tried to make recommendations that are what I would call traditional recommendations. Add a turn lane, revise the traffic signal, install the traffic signal, things like that. NCDOT has told us that interested in some alternative intersection treatments that are things like roundabouts, restricted movement intersections, super street concepts, which are good in theory, but in my opinion, when you're trying to do some of that on an existing 5-lane facility that's developed and you don't just have a blank canvas, it may not be very practical or constructible or feasible, even if you don't have, because if you take this intersection, for example, and you restrict some movements, you don't let people go through or left, you have them turn right, go down 25 some distance, and then make a U-turn to go down 25 the other direction, well, where are they making the U-turn?
Yeah.
So that has to be accounted for, and so it's been a challenge to try to limit what we're recommending to these traditional improvements that we think are feasible and constructible and could, in some form, be the responsibility of this development and not have to reconstruct US 25 to become a super street when that's just not feasible. And that's my opinion.
Yeah. Now, one of the things mentioned in the plan was that I guess you're looking to allow left turns coming out of Depot Street onto 25.
Yeah.
And my question is, under anywhere near busy traffic, there will be nowhere to turn left because the traffic backs up that far.
Yeah, so you're right. And so what happened is, in some of these analyses, is we have the Depot Street intersection as being a full movements intersection. People could turn left in or turn left out. But and the original TIA identified that intersection will fail. People won't be able to make the left turn out during those peak periods because of all of the traffic and congestion. So what we did is we take that left turning traffic and we redistributed it to the two adjacent intersections, because you're right, somebody sitting there, they're not going to be able to turn left. They're going to have to go up to Fanning Bridge Road or maybe make their way out to Howard Gap Road to make the left turn. So that's reflected in this latest study that you have. But what's important to remember is that during your off-peak periods, when you're not experiencing those heavy
You
traffic,
might be able to make it there.
yes, and so it was that full movement driveway was more for the functionality of the development during the off-peak periods and not a traffic recommendation.
The other part that I wonder about is the part of the road that comes out of the development right past the gas station, where you're going to be dumping people that want to go south, but you're dumping them out on the north side of the intersection, so they'll have to cross multiple lanes to get in the left turn lane.
On Howard Gap Road?
Yeah. And how is that going to happen if traffic is backed up, which at that point, it's almost always backed up, not just in heavy hours.
You're absolutely right, and so that's, first off, that's recommended to be a right-in, right-out driveway only. Secondly, when we redistributed the traffic to the other two intersections to try to handle the left turning traffic, only 10% of the traffic was sent there. 10% remained at Depot Street, and 80% was sent to Fanning Bridge Road. So you're right, there will be limited ability to be able to get into the left turn lane.
That's all the questions I had.
Unless you did the same little intersection that you were just talking about
Yeah.
on Depot Street, on this one where it ties in down here, you could do the same thing, just having that turn, because you couldn't turn out there anyway. That would put traffic across the road tracks back down and then making that right turn, duplicating that, like I said, when you're turning off the building and everything else.
it seems to me, I think most of it tends to make sense. I think if we don't put in that double turn lane onto Howard Gap Road now, in my mind, it's gonna be a disaster.
I understand. And I just want to make sure that all of the responsible parties contribute.
And I agree that in my mind, I mean, that's a problem right now. DOT should be the ones to fund a big chunk of that. That's like the turn lane on Fanning Bridge Road. That's an issue right now.
Right. So we have, this report has yet to go back to NCDOT for their further review and comment. So that's basically our next step, is to now submit this and have another meeting with them and hopefully have them agree with what we've suggested here, and then start a dialogue on, ultimate responsibility or shared responsibility for these improvements.
So if we build the old King Creek Road extension, would that go around the metal building that's there now, or would we have to take that down to straighten the road out, or?
I haven't looked at it from that aspect. I look at it from a very simplistic stick
Right.
figure type, how much traffic's gonna be diverted away from this intersection to that intersection type thing. The actual physical layout and construction of that connection, I couldn't speak to yet.
I mean, I think it could be constructed, just to comment on it, to go around the big green
Right.
building we call it. I think ultimately, we'd probably want to look at taking that building down as one option, because as you know, I talked to you, well, we went through a whole process of bidding a building to take its place, and, we rejected several years ago, and the bids came in high, and maybe it wasn't the right time to put another metal building up that would take the place of the function of that green building. But I think ultimately, it's probably best as a straight shot through there. You may be able to move around it, but
And it's probably in our best interest to hug that road as close as we can to the railroad,
yes.
just to give us more property to develop on the other side.
Because we still have some of the town center property here that is part of the plans to redevelop.
Once you lose the building, it's in the railroad right of way, it's like a grandfather in, that will take it out of there, then you won't be able to build anything there.
Well, you'd be able to put a road up to wherever that right of way is, which I think is probably going about down.
Even if you had a little slow S right there, I think that would slow traffic. I think that'd be pretty good, because right now it's a straight shot and people fly right down through here.
Mhm.
Right here in front of our town hall, people, I see major problems, people walking and they're flying.
Yeah.
So I'd like that slow down traffic would be nice. I think that's something we can decide later if they're coming down to that. So,
I think that's a good point. So have we had comments from the developer team on this, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I've had multiple conversations, and, we don't know what DOT's gonna accept on this. I think from a town and developer perspective, of course, we gotta meet the criteria of what a TIA and traffic impact analysis requires, which is what James' firm did. But the improvements that are ultimately approved, we'd like to see this in negotiations still. Maybe the right turn lane coming east here, so the right turn lane on Fanning Bridge Road, turning right onto 25,
Right.
probably the highest priority that helps traffic movement through here. It's already needed.
Right.
Just some initial comments, that's probably something that I think we could all agree to. Now, how do we, what parts DOT, what parts of town? We'd have to work that out, or the developer, what part the developer does, DOT or the town. ultimate first as a developer, but that right turn lane from Fanning Bridge onto 25, that's probably something that's going to stay in there. The extension of Old King Creek Road to Howard Gap, I'm thinking that's something we should seriously put on the table. The town probably dedicating the right-of-way, maybe developer builds the road. Same thing on the right turn lane on 25, or excuse me, Fanning Bridge coming onto 25. We help, or DOT with the right-of-way acquisition, developer builds the right turn lane. Some of these other improvements, I think we need to have some more discussion with DOT on, you know, is it fully reasonable to meet the requirements, or is there something less than that we could do so that it meets the requirements of you know, Manor and Craig or any other firm doing a TIA on that area. So we hopefully can get back to the table with our developer rep and negotiate something that, you know, gets us back to our, something close to our old agreement. So that's kind of the next steps that we're looking at. And as James mentioned, this hasn't gone back to DOT yet. So we've got, the good news is, and there's still a lot recommended in here, we don't have those other intersections anymore that initially the comments were saying include King Creek Road and 25, so you know, where CVS is, down to Wood Hill, which is the entrance to South Chase, to this intersection right in front of us, Old King Creek and Fanning Bridge. So those are off the table now, and I think we're comfortable with that. And I think we made enough of an argument to DOT that those things should be part of the recommendations for mitigation. So now it goes back to DOT, and we'll see what we can come to as far as what we hope is a reasonable set, and start hanging a number on it too. The developer, you know, response, and I'd say staff too, looking at this, the biggest thing that we're like, that's really difficult to do, especially to drop on the town developer, is the two left turn lanes on 25 and, you know, feeding onto Howard Gap and 1,000 feet of receiving lane. I mean, as a result of this project, that's probably more what's because of what's there.
Exactly.
I would agree.
So, but no.
Do we have any other questions or comments on this item? Mr. Bosso?
Yes, sir.
We thank you. We appreciate it.
Definitely have.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and continue to do my best for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
We appreciate your work. Next up, we have item number 6, the cost estimates for streets recommended for resurfacing. Ms. Kathy here from the Guild Associates.
Yes.
We appreciate you being here today.
Hey, how is everybody?
Well, report.
Fine. I don't guess there's a whole lot to talk about. Our total construction estimate was in the 133 range with engineering services and testing services, and so we're in the 162 range for the area that we designated. And that's based off of, you know, our previous years and previous experience, so if that's in range and fits the budget, we'll proceed with bidding on this phase. And have that in a few weeks.
That was just on the two different streets.
Yes, that's correct. Hawks Nest Hawks Nest Drive and Sandtower Court. They're both in South Chase. It's connected to the project that we did last year.
Do we have any questions? Do we need to approve this? Or we good?
If you can make a motion that we, to support it, and then we'll go to bid the project, so we still have to go to bid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion for you.
All right.
We support it.
We have a motion to support it. We have a second by Councilmember Lance. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? have you, I think we want to go through, the courts. Yes, for our courts.
Yeah, this is not on the agenda, but, while we had Ben here, since McGill Associates is working on the, what we hope is the final design on this, I wanted to have him make some comments. Again, and this is for the basketball, tennis courts, and pickleball courts.
I appreciate you going over this, even though it's on the agenda as well.
No, that's fine. Y'all, I guess what, you need to review it all? Do you want, y'all looked at it? Y'all have questions? How do you want me to?
Oh, I think we just got this today, so you can, you guys go, we have an overview of what we got here.
It's very similar to the conceptual layout that we did a few months ago. We have just, put a little more refinement into that as far as bench location and, garbage receptacles and paths, and we got grading and drainage and stuff done. You just have a sheet on the layout and so forth. But I think we may have turned pickleball courts 90 degrees. Helps, these will play better with the sun. Allows a little bit more efficient use of gates. If pickleball is a success and want to expand, we can just leave these in place. Like I said, we've got, just a few details as far as layout and spacing and things like that, but the concept is very similar to what we had a few months ago. So,
Do we have any questions or comments on?
I'm not a pickleball player. Is 5 feet on the end of the court, between the end of the court and the fence, is that reasonable?
actually, let's see, we have a little more than that. We have 8 feet. You have 5 feet on the sides.
So I guess your question.
Yeah, but the way you've got those courts turned, that 5 feet is on the back end.
Actually, and that, we don't have the net shown on there. So the net would be, those would be playing north-south generally.
So
Would be
you've
how
got
it would-
Then they're turning
you've got
around.
4 pickleball courts, not 8, correct?
Correct.
So that's what there's a net between the two blue.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking of this.
I get it.
Yeah. So the green area is
Yeah.
like the center area.
Yeah.
So the 5 foot is the back
Thank
side.
you.
Yeah.
I was confused.
So, and that was just, there are different sizes. I mean, if you want to get, but for a general recreational court, that was the sizes that we
Okay.
could be going with.
And I like the basketball court the way that's over.
Me too.
And we did, and we had some discussion with Mark and Greg both. We do have a fence between the two courts so that, this basketball's not flying into that one, but we do not have fences all the way around the court. So, there's, unless you want to lock up the court, it's like the basketball flying off the
So you
court, it's
just-
not that big of a.
So you just have a fence dividing off the tennis court from the basketball court, and then in between the two courts?
Correct.
That's awesome, yeah,
So it'll be a little bit more open.
yeah.
Not like in the future, in the way future, is there any possibility you have a roof over this? Is it, how's it go? Construction right here, can you add that later on? Several years on the road.
130 feet is a pretty good span. You could, the flood permitting would probably be the most difficult aspect of that. There again, a flood study would have to be done to make sure that those columns did not create a rise in the flood elevation. And then, like I said, that would just be, it'd be an expensive structure with a span.
Yeah, that would be like the columns where your benches are, shows your benches. Yeah, one side between both sides of the tennis court.
But you could build a structure.
That was just my question. Like in the future, if we have to grow.
Or you could do over part of it. guess that gets difficult. If it's
Yeah, that,
in the center, and maybe on the one side, yeah, because you'd have to have columns.
So this now is just east of the picnic shelter? In that piece of property there?
Thinking east-west, so.
well,
Yeah, it's coming, yeah, east, that's right.
But it's still on the south side of
To give you a
the trail.
Yeah, to give you a landmark, Ben's good show you.
that's an overall sheet. Right there.
Yeah, okay. See, I was thinking that we were planning it over here more or something.
This is the
That's
existing
fine.
pavilion.
Correct, and right there is that, the workout.
So, yeah, if you go to the exercise pad, it's right on the other side of the exercise.
There was some discussion out here, but the thought process was to make a takeaway of a crossfield.
Exactly.
And that this wouldn't.
Right.
So,
And it's being built with the possibility for extension east.
yeah, like I said, so the pickleball is a great success. You could come right here and put 4 more.
Right. I like it.
Also want to mention, I guess, Dave, Ray, do you have any comments?
No, we're excited because it will be an ample start for sports for the community. We're already brainstorming on how to program certain sections. Obviously, there'll be some reserve time for courts. We'd like to do some instructional pieces. We see it as an enhancement to our day camp program, adding some pieces in the morning hours that kids can utilize and learn some new sports.
Sounds good to me.
Do you have a fence that divides the tennis court and the pickleball?
Yes. Yeah, we have a high fence between those, and then laterally between the pickleball courts, those are a lower fence. And you have it, like, it's open around the ends, if you need to walk around. That allows us to, have a singular gate, access 2 courts at a time and things like that. Trying not to high fence everything where it feels like a bunch of sales, so to speak.
And just out of curiosity, Ben, what are you envisioning for the surface here? Asphalt or concrete?
Yeah, asphalt will be the structure, and then it's coated, with the typical court surface.
So what's the lifespan on that again?
There's no load on it in this situation, so, it's not like the traffic, and it's coated, so you have it protected from the environment and things like that, and from loading. But it still will, asphalt does become brittle more and more over time, and there will be spots that come cracked. But it would, you're probably 20 years at least on the, now you probably have to do the coating.
Yeah,
More
more
often
often,
than
you
not.
need to keep up with the code.
Yes, and but, as far as any structural repairs, and it'd probably be spot repairs over time more than it would be replacing the whole course.
Enough to get you to retirement.
Maybe not me. We're working towards it, though. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Kathy?
The next part will be, Ben, his firm will, do a full-blown design package on this, and they'll go out for bids, and you have an idea about when bid
Actually,
package go out?
the next step would be permitting, and then the one,
Permitting, yeah.
we did just, some of these, the grading pushed us over that, the grading's at the 1 acre threshold, which is good to get erosion control permit. So, we have to get erosion control stormwater. So far, our no rise has gone well. Our modeling we've been able to achieve the no rise. So as soon as we get those permits, or far enough down the road on those permits, we can bid that. So I'd like to have those at the end of February. So I guess, I'd like to have that back to y'all in March maybe. So.
All right. Sounds good. We appreciate you being prepared for comments and questions on both of those items.
Sure.
Thank you, y'all. Moving on to item number 7, the call for analysis for bringing recycling services in-house. I know the majority of council last week was in favor of continuing the negotiations, but I think we want to continue going over this item, particularly for your benefit, Councilmember Lentz, and the public, of course. So, Mark, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, with our recycling contract being up, we wanted to look at kind of a full-blown cost analysis of what it looked like bringing it back, or if we were to consider bringing it in-house. And so we went through, the estimate on it is $167,000, and that's looking at two-person crew, equipment, fuel expense, maintenance, training costs, uniforms, insurance, and then disposal fees. We're looking at, if we stay under the existing arrangement, it would be going to, or if we were to bring it in-house and not use curbside anymore, it would go to the county's transfer station. So, and right now, for example, the city of Hendersonville, they're not charging for them to bring the recyclables there. So under this arrangement, we're putting it at a zero cost on disposal fees. But we wanted to, take a look at a comparison if we were to bring it in-house versus renegotiating with curbside. What would that look like in an annual basis? And after annualizing out everything we look at expense-wise in the first year, those things came to, was just shy of $167,000. So we've had a good arrangement with curbside and our recycling services. The other option is looking at doing an RFP. And if we did an RFP, really the only competition out there is curbside and then Waste Pro. And quite frankly, when we did the RFP years ago, we had more competition and we didn't get much of proposals that came in, and curbside wound up being kind of our best bet. So curbside is looking to go up on their our per monthly household fee. So the way the fee structure, and I guess more for our newer council members, we have a monthly household fee that's annualized at about $110,000 is what it comes out. Right now it's $3.07 per household per month. We're almost at 3,000 households at this point. So we're about $110,000 a year is our budget. Curbside, due to inflation, they're looking at going up from anywhere from $4.20 to $4.25 on their household fee. So if you calculate those costs on the high end, that's at $153,000. So we are looking at a pretty sizable jump at this point. However, and as I indicate in the report, they've shown what the average cost for recycling service in North Carolina, and it's anywhere from $430 up to sorry, I have the amount back in here. $439 up to $456, and I showed the report that supported that. Curbside's looking in the $420 to $425, which is not, I know it's a big jump, but it's comparatively what we're looking cost-wise is not too bad. So if we can renegotiate our contract, which is what I'd like to recommend, is to renegotiate that, come back to you in February with a new deal, maybe look at some service enhancements. I think we'll be in good shape.
I think we're okay with continued negotiation.
Did you admit it?
No, I mean,
You weren't here, so it's hard.
Yeah, for the cost savings, that you would have to go with outside agents, so I mean, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
How long do you think they'll do before they want to, how long will that contract be for before they want to renegotiate a new price?
Probably 5 years.
Okay, so it would be we're saving that.
So the way things are going, we probably should order the truck now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe later on with the RFP, kind of throw some competition out there, because usually people do RFPs that they sharp on the pencil, keep the business.
Do we have any other comments or questions on that item?
But now the truck cost is only gonna be a one-time fee for now, so that would be, you get the 167 now, but next year, the following years you wouldn't, or is that?
It would be about that amount.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, they pick up the same days as our trash pickup throughout all of Fletcher?
Yes.
And we do that, what, 4 days a week now?
Every other week.
Every other week, yep.
But it's, yeah, okay. Takes 4 days to do it. Gotcha, okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I think we're good to go there, Mr. Manager.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and we'll move on to item number 8, for comments.
Okay. Our Polk citizen survey is about ready to go. I sent that out. I think everybody had good, didn't have anything else to add on that, so I think that's ready to roll. So we'll be having that ready to release, and then we'll be working on some items relative to that to kind of market it or get that out. Our draft design, and we just went through that with the courts. The airport authority, they have requested use of the council chambers for their meetings. And this is due to their renovation that's going on or about to happen. And I discussed this with you last week, and I emailed Trevor about this, and I think the consensus on that is that we would charge them to use council chambers for the period of time that they need to use this for their board meetings. And that would be second Friday of every month at 8:30 in the morning. And we would charge them at the outside fee for non-resident fee on that. I think that was a consensus. And that would be starting in the April-May range. And if it's okay, I'll go back with Lou Blauweiss, the executive director of the airport, and kind of finalize that with him. And let's see.
How many years was that for again, Mark?
It's through 2026. So it is for a while, and we would have first priority to the room.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I guess my other comment would be just when you communicate with them, just make sure they're aware of election time.
yeah. So when I communicate back with him, they would know, because we've been allowing the elections board to use this, obviously, for the election time, the general election and for early voting. So they would either have to go to our multi-purpose room or some other location during that time. So that would be the requirement on that. So.
But it's otherwise vacant anyway, right?
It is,
So it's
you
not
know,
a-
I don't want to say it's underused, but you have council meetings in here twice a month. You've got planning board on a monthly basis. There's some months that planning board doesn't meet in here or doesn't meet. So, you know, it's a room that's not used
Yeah.
continually. And it's not a bad public use, and, you know, assists a neighbor here that's a fairly large public entity, so.
Back to using this room for elections, I think we should go back to the election board and ask them for some kind of a break on the cost of the elections or something, because, I mean, they're taking this room for several weeks at a time because of early voting. We're paying all the utilities on it, they're not paying nothing.
Right.
They should put something up. This is my
We'll
thought.
circle back. I know
I think that's
Christine's
fair.
had some discussion with them about impacts on the rooms and paying for that. For example, I think they've covered the cost for carpet cleaning.
They haven't as of yet.
They haven't as of yet.
No.
Well,
I agree with Bob. I think it's a huge toll on the room because they're making babies.
If it was just the normal election, that would be one thing, but when you throw in early elections, that ties it up for a long time.
yeah.
We have
Wow.
primaries in the spring.
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody agrees with you, Bob, if I'm hearing everything correctly.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll make a note about that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other business from the body? I'll just mention one thing. I just want to say thanks to staff and Jim for being here at the 4 p.m. time for the budget workshop. Much appreciated you all doing. That being said, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. You got a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn during discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.